Welcome to the One Body, One Life podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Jason Wan, lifestyle physical therapist. I teach you exactly how to get back to a pain free, active life, feel stronger, and be the most resilient version of yourself. If you are somebody that is interested in getting coaching, specifically if you're somebody that's been dealing with, let's say, years of pain or it's been hard to overcome an injury, a surgery, what I specifically can help you with is teaching you step by step how to optimize things like your strength and mobility, how to optimize your sleep, your nutrition, and also how to make exercise a part of your life rather than feeling like it's more of a chore. So, if you're interested in getting coaching to address chronic pain from a much more holistic and comprehensive scope, please go to go.flexwithdrj.com/apply. Now, if you go there, go.flexwithdrj.com/apply, where you'll be taken to is a quick application form where we will review your application and potentially see if you're a good fit to work with us. Again, go to go.flexwithdrj.com/apply and we'll be happy to help you there. So today I wanted to go through a quick Q&A. I actually get dozens of different messages and comments from different places. What I do personally is on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and a bunch of other places, or even by email, is I do take curated questions that I feel will be helpful to broadcast onto my podcast. So I have 3 questions here, and I hope that you find them helpful. I'm going to share with you exactly what they are. And then based on whichever ones you feel are the most helpful, you can simply just fast forward or rewind to those. But the first question that I had coming in, and this was actually a direct message from my Instagram, Flex with Dr. J. Somebody said that, hey, Dr. J, I'm very fearful that my pain will never go away. I've been dealing with this for at least 8 years now. I've suffered with low back pain and sciatica. I'm just curious, what should I do? I feel like this pain will never go away. Thank you. That's one question. Number two is somebody that said, how do you get back to running after a knee surgery? So that's just like a pretty simple question. And I'm happy to dive into the science of that, how to return to running in a very safe manner. And then number three is Dr. J, it seems like you have a lot of fun. You have a lot of mental grit when it comes to exercising. I was just curious, how do you make exercise look so easy, fun? For me, it feels more like a chore. So I'm going to probably highlight exactly, how I am so consistent with my exercise, but also why I enjoy it, how I enjoy it more, and how I make that feel more effortless in my life. So let's go through the first one. And I think this is a pretty deep and in-depth conversation that I even have with my clients when they do come into my program. So pretty much one of the first things I always say to my clients, especially when I know that they have a lot of fear and uncertainty with what regards to will this pain ever go away, but they're looking for a solution. I always say to them that the fear of pain is oftentimes worse than the pain itself. So to give you some backdrop on what that means is that pain is obviously it's very physical, it's a very real entity. So whenever we feel pain in our lower back or pain in our glutes, pain sciatica wise, that is a very real sensation. Whether it's you go to doctors and they say it's all in your head, or they'll say something like you just have to manage this and deal with it because of your age and etc. I don't really like the way that people give those answers. In fact, they're not even really answers. If anything, it leads them down a path that makes them feel more fearful and more uncertain. I find that that's the same with MRIs as well, is that somebody that's 40 years of age gets an MRI on their lower back to see what's going on. And all of a sudden they find out they have degenerative disc, they have a disc herniation, they have bone spurs, they have facet syndrome. So they have a number of these things. And all of these honestly are just diagnoses and labels that cause more fear and also more kinesiophobia. Kinesiophobia is defined as the phobia or the fear of moving again. So that fear of movement, even though what I find is that movement is actually the medicine, that's actually the solution, is that people oftentimes create kinesiophobia because of their past experiences, because of their MRI, because of what uh, let's say doctor or other practitioner has told that person. They're not empowering them. If anything, they're thinking that they're empowering them or trying to do what's best for them by saying avoid this. But if anything, it disempowers them, creates more fear, uncertainty, and again, kinesiophobia. So that leads to a cascade of events where if you stop moving, you literally get weaker, you get stiffer, and therefore pain increases, and therefore it creates this perpetuating loop of fear, uncertainty, and even more pain. So what I would say to that person, and what I say to my clients all the time, is the fear of pain is oftentimes worse than the pain itself. This physical pain is actually not your limiting factor, because I know a number of people that have had a knee surgery or have had some sort of injury. And let's say they have some associated pain with some movement. But if the pain is tolerable and they're still keeping that area moving, is that the likelihood is they'll still maintain some form of capacity to do the things they love to do. They'll increase their strength, their endurance, their power, and other forms of athletic ability. They'll get better at that over time. They'll get more proficient with movement if they decide in their head that movement is indeed medicine, and it is indeed still the fact to their quality of life, versus the kinesiophobia is that it leads them down a path of stagnancy, uncertainty, and it doesn't help them at all. Okay. Sorry about that if you hear a fire truck passing by. So, in any case, the fear of pain is worse than the pain itself, meaning that you need to start with the brain. You need to start with rewiring how you think. You have to rewire your beliefs. You have to rewire the psychology around the pain experience that you've been dealing with or that you've been struggling with. So one of the things that I teach, again, is called no pain, no gain. It's a combination of psychology and pain neuroscience education. And no pain, no gain is not NO, no pain, no gain. One of the first things I teach to my clients all the time is knowing pain is knowing gain. So if pain to a more scientific level, you realize that pain can be very threatening, or it can be something that you feel like you can overcome. An analogy that I like to use with a lot all the time is like a clown, right? The fear of clowns. I actually don't know the scientific term of what that means, but let's say the clown is analogous to pain. So you have a fear of clowns. So therefore, what you do is you avoid the clown, you avoid Pennywise, you avoid watching that movie at all cost, you avoid carnivals, you avoid pictures of clowns. And so you avoid it at all costs. So what ends up happening though is that when a clown comes into your line of sight, whether it's on a YouTube channel or you actually go to some sort of theme park and you see a clown, you're going to be extremely scared of it because you have been just avoiding it. It's the same thing goes that when you avoid pain at all cost, is that when there is something that's threatening to your body, you immediately get very fearful and uncertain. But what I tell people is if you can slowly expose yourself to clowns, you can slowly expose yourself to replicating the pain that you've been feeling, is that over time that pain can be overcome with movement and through strength training and through exercise. But many people are fearful of strength training and fearful of exercise. They're fearful of what might happen to their body flaring themselves up if they decide to do a barbell squat or do some form of exercise. But I always say think of the clowns. If you just start off with slowly exposing yourself to Google image clown and just look at pictures of like random nice looking clowns that are really happy. Then eventually you watch some sort of kids show with like really happy go lucky clowns. And then maybe you take yourself to the carnival, right? Where there's like these clowns that are like with the big nose and everything. And you slowly expose yourself to that in person because that's a little bit more threatening. And then finally, maybe like your last and final step, it's like maybe you watch the movie It, where there's like the scariest clown of all time. And therefore you're able to sit through it, but you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Like I said, to translate that to what I'm saying is that when you have this fear of this pain will never go away, I need you to switch your mindset from like what avoiding things at all costs to really thinking about how can I still do the things that I either love or do the things that I know will help me with my pain and not and decrease that threat and that fear of what might happen to your body. And all it is that you need to slowly expose yourself to that. That's one way of doing it, but also understanding how our mind plays tricks on us. Our mind starts to create this long-term perpetuating fear mongering loop where you are more stricken and more limited by the thought of flaring yourself up rather than actually experiencing the flare up. And it's not your fault, right? Because this is through repeat experience. This is through our culture. This is through our past experiences with other doctors that have told us XYZ. So just understand that in order to overcome that fear, and I'm talking to that person that did direct message me, but in order to overcome that fear, there has a sense of there has to be a sense of gradual exposure. There has to be a way of kind of rewiring how your body perceives a certain movement or a certain thing or a certain action as a threat to the system. And you need to honestly go for it. Okay. So that is what you should do is strength training, mobility, nutrition, all those things. You can find I approach it from a very holistic scope, but you have to start with the mind first. You have to start off with pain neuroscience education, gradual exposure, and ensuring that your mind is in the right place, potentially before you proceed with some sort of like higher level, more intense activity like strength training or running. And I love those things. I do those things right now to keep my body out of pain, but you need to start off with the mind first. Okay. So let me go into our second question, which is how to return to running after a knee surgery. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about the differences between a meniscus repair, a meniscectomy, a total knee replacement, a ACL surgery, because at the end of the day, a knee's a knee, right? A knee has the ability to flex and extend, to straighten and bend, but also has little gives of tibial internal and external rotation. How does a runner, like a person that was a previously were running before the surgery, gets the surgery, does maybe is doing the rehab or maybe hasn't started the rehab and is trying to get back into running. So the first things I would always say is that it's simply enough. It's by not necessarily gradual exposure, because I find that gradual exposure is what I just talked about in regards to fear, right? But there is a sense of fear, like after a surgery, I don't want to flare my knee up. So I don't want to run at all, or I only want to run like a small distance because of fear. So gradual exposure is also a sense of what I always say is load versus capacity. You understand that as you're recovering from a surgery, your strength is not 100% there. The likelihood is your other knee is more flexible and more tolerant to impact, like running. So just understand that you can't just bust right out of the gate and do 5 miles right away. That wouldn't make sense, because then you're just going to set yourself backwards. But with running, there is a couple things you can do. So one of them is find the right shoes. Okay. Usually, what people think, and this is what I always say to people, is that many people think that they need more supportive shoes in order to support their knee. And quite frankly, it's actually the opposite. That sometimes less supportive shoes, as in shoes that are lighter, they're more flexible, right? More of like a little bit more towards the minimalistic end, actually will decrease the stress to your knee over time. So how does that work? What ends up happening is, imagine if I ran in Air Maxes. So Air Maxes are these nice stylish shoes. Me and my wife have a couple pairs each, and they are stylish, right? They're really stylish. They look nice. They have an air bubble. So those seem like the right shoes to run in because they're more supportive, they're comfortable. But if the shoe is super clunky, if the shoe has a lot of support, has like a lot of medial support, if the shoe doesn't bend very much, so you can actually try to bend the toe portion of your shoe and try to bend it towards basically where you put your foot in. If there's not a lot of give to that, then that is a horrible shoe to run in, because your feet feel great while they're in it, but the likelihood is you're going to heel strike harder. Your cadence, so like how many steps you get in a minute, that's going to be a lot slower because the feet are actually weighed down by the heaviness of the shoe. So while your feet might feel good, is that research shows that as your feet and Achilles and your ankle joint feels more supported, is that automatically you start to increase the stress to your knee, your hip, your lower back, and everything above the shoe. Versus if you run more in a more of a barefoot or a more minimalistic shoe that's lighter and has greater flexibility in the shoe, what that will do automatically is it will increase the stress to your foot, your Achilles, your ankle to an extent. It's going to increase the overall stress to your ankle and foot complex. But what will happen and over time is you will adapt, and you will actually decrease the stress to your knee, your hip, your lower back, and everything above the chain, if that makes sense. So as your foot and ankle takes some of the brunt of the stresses of running, you will eventually adapt so that your Achilles, your ankle, and everything gets stronger. And therefore, you're going to have this much more efficient lower extremity chain to get back to running without messing up your surgery or without flaring up your knee. Okay. So, what I always say is that try to slowly expose yourself to a more minimalistic shoe, which is actually, it's very counterintuitive to what certain American podiatrists would say, or certain podiatrists, like they're foot doctors, but they always recommend insoles. They always recommend like the more supportive shoe, which I find is ridiculous. Every single person that I find that have either worn insoles long term or have worn some sort of clunky shoe that was claimed as more supportive, almost every single one of them that I know have either had, over time, had more foot pain because their feet actually got weaker, or they had some sort of knee, hip, or lower back injury over time that was as a result of somebody telling them to wear more supportive shoes for running, for example. Okay, every single one that I've spoken to. Okay, now does that mean that everybody needs to run in a super like Vivo barefoot, super minimalistic shoe? I'm not saying that either. But what I do recommend though is that to find the balance between a minimalistic shoe, which, let's say if you had a ton of ankle injuries, or you've had stress fractures in your feet in the past, or plantar fasciitis, you may not transition immediately to a super minimalistic shoe. You might need to find the balance of a shoe that is lighter, has some more flexibility than like an Air Max, for example, and find that balance between minimalistic versus a maximal support shoe. Okay. And then maybe over time, then you can start to transition to a more minimalistic shoe. That's what I would tell somebody that has had a knee surgery, is wearing more flexible shoes. The other points I want to make are cadence and foot strike. So those are actually really important points to hit on. So cadence and foot strike are things that I actually look at. I am actually a certified running trainer. So when I do have my clients worldwide, they will send me a video of them from a lateral view and actually a posterior or a back view. I have them film for at least 15 to 20 seconds, if not more. And I actually get to put their video onto an app, and I'm able to analyze it thoroughly. So I'm able to analyze whether one hip drops to another, whether one foot crosses the midline. I get to see if their knees are caving in. I get to see if they're overstriding. So a lot of those I take into account. Those things I just said are not very obvious to the naked eye. You would have to be certified to do. And those are the little nuanced thing that if you are somebody that's very serious about your running, I can definitely help you with that, but I would need to analyze it further. The things that are more within your control though, are you can film yourself from, again, that lateral view, that side view. And things that you can pick up on are like cadence and foot strike. So cadence, how you measure that is the amount of steps that you get in a minute. And there's apps out there like Metronome where you can actually tap your phone. And if, let's say, if you're analyzing yourself, you can see like how fast your foot strike is or how many steps you get in a minute. Usually what I'd see is that if there is some sort of like knee injury or something, I'll often see that their cadence is slow. You do want to have a cadence that's anywhere between the bare minimum 170 upwards of 185 to 190, depending on what your speed is. That cadence is actually a research-based cadence by which elite runners run naturally at 175 and sometimes even 190 steps a minute versus the average American or the average person, like an average recreational runner, oftentimes runs at like 155 to 165 and sometimes even slower than that. And what that does is that it increases the ground reaction force. You spend more time in the air. So therefore, think about the thousands of steps that you get in a minute. The likelihood is you're probably overstriding or you're spending more time in the air, which increases the ground reaction forces to your foot and everything up above. At the same time, you're likely to have this poor running economy that's not sustainable. Okay, so try to like look at that and see if you're running at 155 to 165 or even less than that, is to try to get your cadence to go up. But the common mistake though is that if your cadence goes up, as in it's your steps per minute that is going up, is that you don't want to get your steps per minute up, but also increase the speed at the same time. Because therefore you might be like, oh, like I'm trying to get my steps up to 175, 185, but then your normal running pattern is like 5 miles an hour, and now you're running 7 miles per hour. So for a person with knee surgery, you're increasing the cadence, but you're also increasing the speed too quickly, which therefore that might result in your knee hurting after. Okay. So make sure like you're increasing your foot, how many steps you get in a minute, but also being mindful of trying to maintaining that same speed. And over time, you can increase your cadence, you can increase your speed over time, or transition from trail running to downhill and uphill running. So there's a lot of ways to progress, but nonetheless, make sure that you stay very calculated with your approach to getting you from your knee surgery to getting yourself back to running with recreationally on a more consistent basis. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful for the person that sent in that question, how to get back to running after knee surgery. Okay. The last and final one is probably this one I can just go off for days, to be honest, is how do you make exercise look so easy and fun? How do you make it more easy and effortless? For me, I find that I've gotten an addiction to exercise. I find that especially the ways that I cope with stress or cope with overwhelm, anger, sadness. When I cope, the way that I cope with any stressful events that happen in my life is I go towards exercise. And I find that if you can almost trick yourself into doing that, you will feel better. Like exercise is one of the best stress relievers in the entire world. There are so many people that say, I just need to walk outside or run outside. And then they feel better when they walk home or run home and they feel immediately better. But that's not natural to certain people because of sedentary behavior or how they grew up. So many people, if they get stressed or overwhelmed, they go towards many things: eating, alcohol, sleeping, watching a bunch of Netflix, right? So basically distracting yourself, which doesn't inch the needle forward with your health by any means, right? So whenever I'm stressed, like I always tell this story all the time, is one of my favorite things. And I don't do it all the time because I'm never super stressed anymore. I manage that stress really well. But when I do get stressed, it's really funny. Like my wife will immediately she'll realize I'm very stressed out, and there was one time we were living in our smaller condo. I was super stressed with like business, and I was just like, dude, I'm not having a good day at all. And I was like almost pulling my hairs. And my wife points at the front door, and I'm like, what are you doing? And she goes, go. And what she meant to me was when she said go, she meant get your workout equipment on, get your clothes on, and go to the gym downstairs and just work out for an hour to 2 hours until you feel better. And that actually happened a few times. And I've told her, like, whenever I'm stressed, just let me go to the gym. Let me just burn it off. And I went to the gym that day, spent like literally 2 hours of just lifting and running and doing a bunch of things, stayed there till 10 p.m. until it closed. And when I came back, I was a new man. It was like all my stress, all my tension, everything went out the window and I felt so much better. What I'm trying to say to answer that question is one way is perceive that your best stress reliever is indeed movement or some form of exercise. When you can start to replace like the exercise, actually, so sorry, to replace some of the negative coping mechanisms that you have in your life, like overeating, Netflix, smoking, all those things that we know aren't really making us healthier and making us better, is actually try to replace that with some form of exercise or movement. Another thing that I really is I like challenging myself. I find that my best accountability partner and the person that challenges me the most is not like my friend, it's not my mom, it's not my wife, it's actually just myself. I find there's such inspiration and there's such a sense of growth when my biggest challenge or my biggest accountability partner is indeed myself. I'm always trying to challenge myself to be better, increase that extra repetition, increase by 5 pounds, make myself faster, jump higher. I find that there is such a great sense of satisfaction when I know that at the age of 35, where certain people, they might be like over the hump, they might be feeling not good about their health. They're like, oh, it's better when I was 18. Is I find that spiritually, mentally, physically, in every way possible, is that I am still at the top of my game. And I hope to still stay at the top of my game if I can indeed just have more of a growth mindset. So, common mistakes that I see when people exercise is that they start to exercise like in the gym or they buy some equipment at home. They do the same routines, but the mistake that they make, though, and I guess there's going to be plenty of mistakes, but here's just one big one, is they don't progress. So they're not logging their workouts and they don't actually log like how many sets, how many repetitions, how much weight they're doing. So what ends up happening though is you might think not everyone has to log, not everyone's like you, but when you log, you actually can see what you did the day before and therefore you learn how to progress. What's the most common thing why people stop exercising is because they're not seeing growth. They're not seeing progress. They're trying to lose weight and they look exactly the same. Why do you look the same? It's because you're not increasing the weight. You're not increasing volume. You're not increasing intensity or anything of that means. So therefore it becomes less fun when you're not seeing progress. But when you see progress and you're logging your workouts, it does become more fun. It becomes more entertaining. It does become more of a challenge to challenge yourself to always be better than the version of yourself yesterday. Okay. So common mistakes is like that cascade of events where if you don't log your workouts, you don't make progress. Therefore, it's less fun and therefore you're going to drop off. Okay. Versus if you could log your workouts, be consistent and actually see growth and see that you're actually getting stronger. So not only will you feel better, you'll feel less pain, you'll be stronger, you'll have greater capacity to do things, but you'll actually see it on your body too. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a very vain person, but I would definitely say it's great to have a six pack. It's great to have sub 8 to 10% body fat. It's great to look confident and feel good in a tank top or with your shirt off. So I would say for the aesthetics and the confidence side, like that's a huge confidence booster to me. But I'm more interested in the longevity and strength aspects. Okay. And that growth aspect, always trying to get better. The last part I'll say in regards to why I exercise so consistently is because when I'm consistently exercising and progressing in the gym, I find that it very much has a bleed over and a translatory effect to everything that I do in life. So when I'm with my wife and my kid, I find that me trying to be my best from an exercise and strength standpoint actually translates to me trying to be a better father and a better husband. And I see that. I could see that I can do more things for them because I'm physically stronger. I find that I'm putting out the extra steps to take my wife out on a random dinner date because I still want to progress that relationship. I don't find that like once I put the ring on it, that's it, right? It's like once I put the ring on it, I want to continue to love her and to build on that relationship, right? So I like the fact that me working so hard in exercise has translated to me increasing my revenue to improve my business, to me to be showing up as a better leader to my clients and to my team and to my friends. They can see that I'm trying to be an example to them as well. I'm actually probably a better friend because I'm always looking out for my friend's health and I'm always trying to provide the right advice. And at the same time, I know that with things that I provide to them is that they'll provide value to me back. It's a reciprocal relationship. So by no means like I'm probably the expert amongst most of my friends in terms of health and fitness, but because I'm keeping people so accountable for that, is that they realize Jay is a good friend, Jay is a good family member, right? So it all just has this like reciprocal value. Whenever I've put exercise at the forefront of everything that I do, is that I've created better relationships, better business life, better revenue, better mindset around everything that I do. So I guess I'm getting too holistic in the sense of like how I've answered this question. How do you make exercise look more fun? Is I'm telling you the why behind why I exercise so much because it has literally changed every aspect of my life, my health, my relationships, my finances, and everything that I do. Like everything that I've done from a reputation and success standpoint in my business and helping my clients is because I've led by example and that I've had exercise as something that I'm addicted to, that I love, that I realize is so fun and so addicting and so challenging that it has literally elevated every aspect of my life. All right. So hopefully that was helpful. Just to wrap up the Q&A for some of you guys that like fast forwarded, rewound. The first question was somebody that was very fearful that their low back pain, their sciatica, basically in general, their chronic pain will ever go away. And they're wondering what to do. Second part was how to get back to running after knee surgery. So I go into really extreme depth of that. And the last part is how do you make exercise look more fun, easy, and effortless? And I hopefully give you a sense of who I am and why I exercise so consistently. So that's what I got for you guys for today's podcast episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I definitely appreciate on usually either Spotify, I think Google and Apple Podcast. If you can leave a 5-star review, leave a review, that'd be helpful so that the information that you got here, the value that you got here can be shared amongst more people that are interested in health, fitness, or even pain relief. I would greatly appreciate that. If you need, click the share button, share it to your social media, share your favorite episodes. That would help me greatly to share my knowledge and inspiration and all the things that you're learning here to other people, like your family members, your friends. Help other people to be better versions of themselves as well. And if you have any questions or feedback, either send me a quick text, 415-965-6580. Let me know. If you're interested in coaching, you simply just text the word coaching. I'd be happy to help you there. And if you have feedback for future episodes, also send me an email, jason@flexwithdrj.com. I do reply and to all my texts and emails personally. And I will always leave you with these last words of advice. We only have one body, one life. Make every action you take be one that makes you a better version of you. Take care.